Hurricane Hillary. Am I the only one that finds that funny?
Oh no, Babylon B did a tweet where it said Hurricane Hillary hits California, destroys 30,000 emails. Hello everyone, how you doing? Yeah, we were kind of doing a little pre-game chat before the live stream, but we are going, and yes, I'm off cam because I've still got this crud in my sinuses, but yeah, so I'm not feeling up to it, I'm not looking up to it, and besides that, my camera was green and I didn't have time to troubleshoot it. How you doing, Chris?
Other than my panic attacks are causing me to feel sick almost every day, I'm okay.
I mean, that can be really bad, especially if you don't know what triggers them.
Yeah. Hang on, my mom's home.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of in general, the people I've known who had panic attacks, some of them are like reliable. They can predict exactly what's going to trigger them, or it might be just the time of day that they can practically set their watch to. Other people, it just happens and they have no idea why. They just, get a panic attack and have to sit down and wait for it to pass. So they can be weird. Anyone out there in Chatland? Show me something in the YouTube chat or the Odyssey or the Rumble chat if you want to get out from under YouTube for whatever reason. Look down below. There are links to this very live stream in Odyssey and Rumble. We all have alternatives, and it's good for that. And speaking of alternatives, if you want an alternative way to support and to chat, hey, welcome back. You can go to streamlabs.com/ShaneKillian and give me a super chat, and it's fun because a little low poly me will pop up on the screen and dance, and no one's done that in a while. It's kind of fun.
Also, a little off topic. I'm a little upset with that Xerus person who responded to your latest video.
You just have to understand. I banned him from the Discord, and I was like DMing with him, and I was like, look, these are the rules. All you have to do is just behave, and if you can say behave, I can come in. He's like, and he just comes right out and says, yeah, I have too many personality problems. I won't be able to control it, and if I go off like that, just ignore me. So he's banned from the Discords, but sometimes he shows up in the chat.
Yeah. Because the thing is, I agree with the video. I was just like making fun of the irony of because like I saw a documentary about the 1960s one time, and I saw like interviews like from the time back then, and like don't get me wrong, the Vietnam War was wrong and all that, but a lot of those anti-war people, you can tell that whatever they were smoking, they smoked a little too much of it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them were their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that caused confusion is like when he said something about I don't want to kill my black brothers and sisters, and people are like, wait a minute, that was Vietnam. Well, I didn't mention this in the video, but it had happened right on the heels of a clash between the military and civil rights protesters.
Oh.
So that's also a little extra context there, but it's a quickie. You don't really have much of a chance to go into detail, but
it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. It's like today, a lot of left-leaning Black Lives Matter activists, they love LBJ, but from what I understand, back in the day, he was really hated.
Oh man, the black people were not buying it from him. They knew he was racist AF.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, wasn't he a Dixiecrat, as they were called?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what they say, because, I mean, it's just too obvious that, they were, the party of the Ku Klux Klan and Jim Crow and all of that. When they were trying to rehabilitate their image, they were trying to say like, oh, no, those racists, those Dixiecrat people, not us. We're the good ones, of course, like I've repeatedly pointed out. They didn't actually change their eugenics policies. They just changed the rhetoric. That was really when LBJ actually was kind of the author of that, to try and make it look like he was doing a favor for black people and he was a friend of them, when it was really just about keeping them oppressed.
That and getting some political votes, you know.
Yeah. Is no one in the chat? That is unusual. We are broadcasting, are we not?
Schisms in, but
Oh yeah, I'm there. It is. It popped up now.
he did say it's frozen, but
hello SKM. Yeah, it wasn't showing up on my side.
no, SKM. I call him Schism.
Yeah, we were talking about Prigozhin before, and I haven't really covered it because none of the news about him has ever made any sense. I mean, they're acting like he was, leading this major coup against Putin, and I don't know. It didn't really seem like that was anywhere close to the truth.
Well, the funny thing, because I've heard this comment, is that there's still a debate on whether or not like it was a legit plane crash or if he was assassinated by a political rival, and someone who lives in Ukraine and all that, and he's one of the people I kind of go to when I try to get my information because he's actually on the ground. He jokingly said, "Well, considering how the state of Russia works and what we know about their infrastructure and politics, either one is very likely."
Hey,
hey,
hey, what's up?
Daniel.
Not much. Hey,
Hey,
I
Jack
just think in
Daniel.
Russia so much you just get oligarchs jockeying for power, and that's really all it is.
Yeah.
so are we doing a stream tonight, or?
Yeah.
We are doing a stream. We are live as we speak.
Oh, hi everybody. How's it been?
Hey, Daniel, calm down. You don't need to breathe so deep.
Oh, sorry.
He's always a
Yeah.
heavy breather.
Yeah.
I should
His
probably
chats are an obscene phone call.
I should probably.
Maybe you gotta cut down on the death sticks. And for those of you that are in the know, no, I'm not talking about cigarettes. It's a Star Wars thing.
Yeah. Salsa Bogner hasn't gotten back to me on it, so.
I haven't heard back from him ever since he met that Jedi, and that Jedi told him he wanted to go home and rethink his life.
Yeah.
I'll just sit here and pretend like I understand what you're talking about.
Although, Daniel, it's one thing that Star Wars never cleared up. What exactly were death sticks? Were they like something you smoked, or were they like an intravenous drug?
Yeah, I'd have to check into that.
Oh, a random guy.
Oh, hi there. Can't be too random. Has to be in one of the groups that's able to join these things.
Hello, Yuri.
Yeah, what's up?
I mean, that's really anyone who goes to patreon.com/ShaneDK or subscribestar.com/ShaneDK and donates at least $1. So how you doing, Yuri?
Oh, great. How about yourself?
All right.
Oh, Shane, I DM'd you about something a while back.
Oh, I don't recall that.
Not sure if you... Oh, yeah, because I had a friend DM you about something we had discussed in the planning room sometime back, but she said you never got back to her.
Okay, I'll have to scroll back through those. Sometimes things get lost a lot through all the scam bots. I swear, you post anything on a crypto Discord and the scam bots just start up on you. They do that on Twitter too, and I'm like, I thought Elon was supposed to have gotten rid of all the bots on Twitter or X or whatever it is now.
Elon's incompetent at running Twitter.
Well, I mean, it's like you just post something about Twitter and the scam bots are coming on there. ooh, what was that link about making all that money with Twitter? And then some other fake user says, yeah, check my profile. The link is there. And it's just the same crap over and over again. I mean, different users, but same crap.
Yeah. Yeah, you can make free money. I wish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I really want to ask the people that create those things, do they honestly believe that that someone's going to fall for that?
Well, obviously, that's why they create them.
I mean, okay, look, I can see like an elderly tech savvy person, non-tech savvy person fall for it, but like
Yeah, like
You
mentally
gotta
ill,
remember,
retards, everyone uses Twitter. Like, I mean,
it's just like with email spam. There's basically zero cost in sending them out, so they don't really need that many people to fall for it to make money from it.
Listen, I was just glad to have somebody check up on me every so often. He's from India. He's very concerned about my car warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or famously, you go on some of those dating sites and like you gotta pay to meet the person who wants to date you. Why?
because they know people will pay for it. I mean,
Fun fact though, when I was desperate and I was on a dating website, I actually called a catfisher out. Like I even used the reverse Google search to find the picture of the model they were using, and I called them out, and like they instantly like unfollowed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weird ones are the ones who tried to keep it up.
Yeah.
My catfishing days are behind me. So.
Yeah, it's like. Yeah, it's like, it says you live in the local area. Well, I am. Well, that's funny, because the Google reverse image I showed says you're so-and-so model, and it says right here, it says on her Facebook page, she's currently living in California. What are you doing in Wisconsin? Yeah.
yeah, Shane, it's to my knowledge that you had an interaction with JF, right? Around 2 or 3, 4 years ago-ish.
With who?
JF Gippy, the French Nazi nationalist, that guy.
I mean, if I did, I don't recall the person you're talking about.
Oh, my bad then. It was like I think it was like a public debate. I think about immigration, but then it stirred off to something else.
Is that the one where Andy Worski had me on under false pretenses?
It might have been. I'm not sure. It was a 2v2 apparently. That was like a while ago.
Oh, the 2v2. I think I remember those.
Yeah, we did a few of those. Those were good.
Yeah, if you don't remember him, there's no point in like asking.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't
that one guy
or anything, but
that one guy on gun control, he was hilarious because.
Hello?
Hello. Hey, Chris.
Chris?
Oh, can you not hear me?
You were cut out. It was hilarious because, and then you left us hanging.
Oh,
yes, you were uncharacteristically quiet.
I was about to say, that one was funny because you kept bringing up, the fallacy in his argument on why guns were bad, and he just kept repeating everything without actually addressing it. Like, he kept bringing up, it's like, there's that 30-day loophole, even though you kept pointing out to him, it's like, listen, there is no loophole. I'm looking it up. There's no loophole in there. Yes, there is. Where is it? Where is it? Well, if you look at this, there was no loophole.
Yeah. There was
one more thing, Shane, if you don't mind me asking. You're a deontologist, correct?
Yeah.
You also subscribe to moral realism, correct?
Define moral realism.
Morals exist independently of human thought.
No.
Objective.
Okay. Well, I mean, does 2 + 2 = 4 exist independently of human thought?
I think you could make an argument. I think that math and logic, I think those are forms of reason.
Yeah, but I mean, reason is a function of the human brain.
Yeah, it is. But like,
Yeah.
there's some foundational things that you have to accept, or else
I mean,
you can't even.
it's not arbitrary. You can't just make it be whatever you want it to be.
Oh, exactly.
But it's still humans. Humans created the concept of mathematics. It's a human creation.
Yeah, sure. You can say that like the concept of mathematics is like a language to describe like the external world, right?
Arguably, humans gave semiotic form to the concept of mathematics more than created it.
Well, yeah, like I view math similarly to how I view like language or natural language, right? An explanation of the human world, or the world that we see forth. But the question I was asking is like, usually what that question implies, right, is that like morals are a physical law or property of the universe, or they exist like independently or metaphysically, like some sort of like natural law.
I wouldn't say they were a physical law like the law of gravity. I mean, they are. I don't, things in the universe aren't really good or bad. They just are. It's only when you have a being capable of acting with moral consideration does morality enter into it.
So
if you're attacked by a bobcat, the bobcat isn't doing anything evil. It's just being a bobcat.
Yeah. So arguably, morality could manifest physically in neurology.
Okay, so like I'd just say you're not a moral realist, Matt, because you don't believe it's external to human thought or independent. But okay.
But it's not arbitrary either. You can't just make it be whatever you want it to be. Any more than you can make 2 + 2 = 5.
Morality?
Yeah.
Why not?
But because you end up with all these inconsistencies.
Do you think someone could have like an entirely different view from you and still be consistent, or do you think that's like impossible?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's impossible because I haven't heard every single person's viewpoint on anything.
Well, then if it's not impossible, right, or you can't think of any logical contradiction, then I'd say if it's conceivable, it wouldn't be. It could be manipulated.
I can show that if it violates the non-aggression principle, then it's internally inconsistent.
How so? Okay.
Oh well, I mean, I've got a whole video on that.
I've seen the non-aggression principle.
Where that's why just use the arbitrariness of it. Like if that's the case, then who gets to commit aggression, and why doesn't someone get to defend themselves from aggression?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the contradiction comes in.
Well, I can't remember every premise in the syllogism, but I think like one of the things that you said is that like an intervention of force is never justified.
Jay, just for clarity's sake, are you talking about the video Libertarianism and Property Rights from First Principles?
That's the one.
Yes. But so someone violating someone else's right is inconsistent. For what exact reason did you give?
It just creates a fundamentally unworkable inconsistency. It's a complete contradiction.
How so? And that's the fundamental question I'm trying to ask. Like, what in particular is the contradiction? By saying I'm an agent, right? I can exercise free will, and I can use my own free will to harm others. I'm not seeing what the moral inconsistency there is.
Because the others get to use defensive force against you. And if you say you have the right to harm others, that will necessitate meaning that they don't have the right to defend themselves. And that's the contradiction. So why would you have the right to aggress against them? Why would you have the right to initiate force against them without them having the right to use force defensively against you?
They could argue they do have the right to use force defensively against you.
Well, then you don't have the right to initiate force.
Wait, why? How does that
Because then they wouldn't have the right to defend themselves.
Sure, they would. They could have the. You can say
you can't use force to stop someone from exercising a right. That's the definition of what a right is. But if someone
Wait,
someone can use force to stop you from doing it, then it's not a right.
Hold on. When they prescribe a moral right? They're not like talking about some sort of legal like sentence, right? They're talking about morally they wouldn't be unethical to do so if they decide to use self-defense. Doesn't mean that they're going to like care about their principle or care about that right. But they can still like believe that they morally like fundamentally have that right. In the end, they're still not inconsistent.
But again, if you have a right, then it would be immoral for someone else to use force to stop you from exercising that right.
Yeah, that
right. That's where the contradiction comes in.
No, I don't think that follows from that.
Maybe you're confused.
Yeah.
No, I'm not confused. I just don't think that it necessarily follows that the being who's initiating force doesn't believe that the other person has the right to defend themselves. I don't see the underlying contradiction. Maybe I'm slow or something, but
because if they had the right, you have a right to freedom of speech. That means that no one else has the right to force you to stop speaking. You have the right to keep and bear arms. That means no one else has the right to take your guns from you by force.
When you say, maybe this might be where the confusion is, when you say like no one has the right to do this thing, like are you saying that it would be immoral for them to do so?
The right is your ability to operate as a free agent. If someone can stop you from doing it, someone has the right to stop you from doing it, then you're not a free agent.
Oh, okay. I was confused on your definition of right there.
Yeah.
But because I thought you were saying that like they don't have some sort of like they would be morally wrong or bad for like committing this action.
It's probably why it's better to use ethics as a term instead of morality, because morality has all this extra baggage that comes along with it. But it's about what can ethically be justified.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I disagree, but like I'm not going to take up your entire live stream with a philosophy debate.
No, it's fine. Debates are fun. That's what makes it great.
Speaking of morality and all that, I brought this up to a person. I actually found out a perfectly good logical explanation for why good will always triumph over evil. Want to know why? Because evil is economically unsustainable.
Of course.
I guess I would ask how you're defining evil, because some people would say, doing drugs is evil.
Well, I mean evil like in like what we know, like a perfectly good example. This is the debate that got brought up in is in Fallout 4. There's this group of raiders that have taken over an amusement park, and they're talking about how we're going to create a raider community, and we won't have to work. All we have to do is just raid other settlements and all that. And I'm just thinking, okay, what are you going to do when everyone's dead, or they fled because you keep raiding them? What are you going to do? You guys don't know how to farm. You're a bunch of psychopaths.
What do you do when there's no more stuff to pillage? If you've already used up everything that's ever been done.
Yeah.
How do you make stuff?
You create a government so you can have organized raiding.
But if there's nothing else, that's pretty much what they're doing. It's what the old thing about socialism. What happens when you run out of other people's money?
Yeah.
It reminds me of this old satire video, Why Libertarianism is So Dangerous. You had linked it on Hawkeye's old blog ages ago, Shane.
Oh, I don't recall that one.
It's from the School Sucks podcast.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, that was years and years ago, though. So,
but yeah, I mean, it's like, what are you gonna do when you run? And that's just the thing too, because none of the tribes, none of the groups of raiders, really actually have a solid foundation economic plan. I mean, there's a group called the Operators, which are basically a mafioso, but even then, their form of business still depends on stealing and enslaving people. And I'm just like, and like I said, I'm like, what are you gonna do when all those resources are gone?
The more important thing to note is that chaos will always beat order.
That's also why the comic book Old Man Logan makes zero sense, because it's like, well, all the superheroes, all they have to do is team together. Yet you want to know why supervillains never team up all the time? When you really think about it, because supervillains often have contradictory goals and agendas. Do you really think Do you really think Magneto, a Jewish Holocaust survivor, is going to want to work with Red Skull, who's a Nazi?
But I mean, it just goes back to the argument of why slavery was economically unsustainable, and they had to keep passing laws propping it up and offloading the costs of slavery onto the taxpayer and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the problem when you have a system of organized theft where you can just paper over a lot of these losses. Then you get things like the financial crisis and all sorts of stuff like that. Oh, they're too big to fail, so let's bail them out. And then, of course, that's the moral hazard that creates the problems to begin with.
Yep.
And of course, you're just trying to cover for the diseconomies of scale by propping them up when there's a perfectly good reason why a free market stops things from getting too big. Because it just stops being, efficient at a certain point. I made this point recently on the podcast with, these streaming companies that are just trying to do too much. Because instead of just saying, okay, we've got a few streaming companies, we got Netflix, we got Hulu, we got Amazon Prime, and then they're all going to jockey for different contracts with all the big content providers. Oh, Disney needs their own, and now Warner Brothers needs their own, and CBS needs their all these different ones. They all need their own, and yeah, it's just too inefficient to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean it's there's an old thing of like, dear everybody starting a streaming service, we are not paying for 8+ of these. Work it out.
Well, that's why everyone was cutting the cord to begin with. They didn't want to pay $150 a month.
Speaking of cable cords and all that, I don't know if I told you this, but South Park did an old episode about cable and about how cable companies, are so abusive and all that, but they missed one perfect opportunity to make a joke there, because the joke is that every time people complain, they say, well, why don't you just do this? Oh, right, you can't. And then they start, touching themselves because they're aroused, by the fact that they're making people's lives miserable. Here's what they should have had. And it should have been, it's like, oh, you don't like our services? You can't afford DirecTV? Well, why don't you start your own cable company? Oh, that's right, you can't. It's illegal. You need a super expensive license to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that people don't want to talk about. The reason why cable companies do what they do is because it's pretty much more or less legally impossible to compete with them unless you have hundreds of millions of dollars and connections within the FCC.
Well, and that's also what the Biden administration is doing is like, oh, we'll pay people, to knock off some, money off of their cable bills and stuff like that, and the taxpayer will pay the rest. Why don't you just allow competition and then let competition drive down the prices? But they're too big of a cartel.
Yep.
The cable companies and the National Association of Broadcasters and all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're big lobbying groups, and they get overlooked.
Speaking of which, there's that Writers Guild strike that very hardly anyone cares about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that thing.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe if the writers were writing things that didn't suck, we might care a little more.
Yeah. I'm going to steal a joke from South Park, but here's how it is. It is Babylon B. We did a survey to across all over America to see what people thought of the Writer Guilds of America going on strike again. 1% said they support the Writers Guild of America, 2% said they don't support the Writer Guilds of America, and 97% said, who the hell is the Writers Guild of America?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really bad time for a writer's strike when large language models can basically churn out better work than most writers.
I mean, yeah, there's jokes where
I mean, you got to work with them. There was the Corridor Crew. I forget which video it was they were doing, but I think it was Sam Gorski was using ChatGPT to help him write the script. But it was stuff like he told ChatGPT to do like 6 lines at a time or something like that. And when it started going off, he was like, no, back up and try it again, and doing feedback. So it's more of a collaboration, just like with image AIs. It's more of a collaboration. It's a tool.
No, AI is stealing.
I mean, do we call painters thieves if they don't make their own brushes from scratch?
Yeah.
I've literally Oh, sorry. I was about to say that.
Name me one style of art that would exist without painters copying from each other.
Oh, SKM said, this is what interrupted me. So he said there were complaints from writers saying that they were only being paid $11,000 a week. I would sell one of my censored things for that kind of money.
Yeah.
That is true. That's what I do find funny. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm all for treating everyone, very well. But like some of those people, like, like that are making like a lot more money than most people do. Like they're acting like they're oppressed and they're underpaid and overworked. Okay, try doing a 10 to 6 job making only $12 an hour. See how oppressed you are now in your old thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really does. That's the funny thing I find about like some of those unions that are so funny because they're always about, well, it's not about the money, it's about the work and all that. Then why the hell are you striking over money?
There's this great quote from W.H. Davenport Adams. The great poets imitate and improve, whereas small ones steal and spoil. That's basically the origin of the whole great artists steal thing.
Okay. Because I've always heard it the other way around. Mediocre artists imitate great artists steal.
NVO. Yeah, wasn't that the episode where they actually did chatbot where Stan discovers that he can talk to Wendy and all he has to do is just post her comments into a chatbot and the chatbot says, here's what you should reply to, or what, then he just copies and pastes it?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's great. I've done that a few times myself, honestly.
I mean, to be fair, I mean a lot of phones already have that. Like if someone texts you saying, "Hi, how you doing?" Like it'll say like options. I'm okay, good. You yourself, stuff like that. And I've done that.
It can also be a good tool for getting out of writer's block. You can just put in what you have so far and say, "Okay, write the next bit."
Yeah, I've been using it to organize some of my work for Wild Hunt Press.
That might even help you. Because it might say something and you're like, why didn't I think of that? And then you start thinking again.
Yeah. And if you don't like what it does, just tell it to come up with something else.
Yeah.
Until you get something to go, oh, yeah, that makes sense, and you can go from there.
Unless you're a Hollywood producer, then everything it writes is going to be crap.
Yeah.
To be fair though, I mean, I know there's that cliche, the Hollywood producer where it's like, dude, we have a super massive hit on our hands, and you have to approve it. And then he looks at it, it's like, it's garbage. And then later they make it, and it's a big hit. A lot of people like to make that joke, but the fact of the matter is, when you really think about it, it's understandable why they would reject something like it. Because here's the thing that people need to realize: hindsight is 20/20, and even then, it's not always 20/20. Nobody knows if the script they have right in front of them is going to be a big hit or not.
Or even when you're making the movie.
Yeah, Hell, I mean, perfectly good example, because we brought this up last time. Star Wars, when it was in production, everyone thought it was going to bomb,
Well, when George Lucas first showed Star Wars, and I know Brian De Palma was there, I think Steven Spielberg was there, and a couple of others. And I think Brian De Palma just stood up and said it was the worst piece of trash he'd ever seen. And I think he had his wife re-edit it basically into the version that was put on the screen, because apparently if they had released the first one, it would have been complete and utter garbage. But yeah, a movie can be completely reshaped in editing. Yeah, the problem with Disney is they just have they have too much, not just all the IP stuff, but all the protections in Hollywood and all the protections in Florida, so they can just keep doing what they're doing, you know, without actually having to worry about making money and such.
It's so cathartic to see so much of their material starting to fall into the public domain.
Yeah,
the
it's
mouse
funny
becomes
because
public domain next year.
Yeah. I want to ask them. I want to ask what's like, why are you guys so obsessed with ending the public domain? Because you guys profited off of the public domain.
Yep.
It's called pulling up the ladder.
Yeah.
I mean, they still do. You know, they made The Little Mermaid. They've made all sorts of different stories that have they're still doing that. Which is why, like, just completely boneheaded decisions, you know, like the Black Little Mermaid, instead of like telling one of the, I don't know, African mermaid stories.
Or make a movie of Anansi the spider. I don't know.
Yeah, Eric July basically calls this method sloppy seconds. I don't know if any of you know who Eric July is.
Oh yeah. Young Rip, whatever number that is.
I saw a Song of the South, you know, a long time ago on YouTube. I vaguely remember it, but what I do remember is that, yes, it's a bad movie, but not because it's racist, just because it's boring.
Yeah, they didn't do a good job of that one.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, the animation...
Which is sad, because the Uncle Remus stories are really good.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the songs and the animated parts of the movie are really good, but yeah, it's the live action parts, it just bores you to tears, you know? But yeah, I don't think it's racist. I don't know what people are thinking.
I'm not sure what they mean about the movie Song of the South, but they try to say that the books are racist, you know, because he puts everything phonetically, and he's trying to phonetically record the sounds of the Gullah language because it was Gullah slaves that he heard it from.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand it, and they go, racist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, this book from the 1890s is racist because the N-word is used a lot and all this stuff. You do realize it was written by an actual black person, because... Like, that's just the thing that I find funny about the N-word, even though I don't use it, is that it's a racist word that means oppression. Yeah, but I've seen black people call each other that all the time, so you're basically saying it's only bad when white people say it. Isn't that kind of racist? Avenue Q. I wish I could have seen that thing, because I've seen bits and pieces of that play, and it looks pretty funny.
Oh, Avenue Q is awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Everyone's a little bit racist sometimes.
You know, Daniel, the funny thing about that is, like, one of the favorite songs is If You Were Gay. Is like, I understand, what the main character, I forgot his name, is trying to do to Rod, but when you really think about it...
Nikki is the character in the other character in the song.
Yeah. But when you think about it, Rod is in the right to say leave me alone, because it's like, listen, whether or not he's gay or not, that's his business, not yours.
Yeah. But yeah. My favorite line from Avenue Q, though, If we all could just admit that we are racist a little bit, and everyone stop being so PC.
Yeah.
Maybe we
I mean, I
could
don't know.
live in harmony.
I mean, I don't know about everyone being a little bit racist, but there's no denying everyone has their prejudices and biases, you know. It's just part of being human.
I mean, if the whole everything is racist concept was framed the way Avenue Q did it, I think it would have gone over a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I will say
the whole point of the everything is racist thing was always so that the person pointing it out could feel good and feel superior to other people. That's all it was.
I always say this: if you think that everything is racist and all that, there's something wrong with you, buddy, not the world.
Yeah.
Like that one girl that saw, like that one girl that thought she saw a Klansman at a college university, but it turns out it was just, you know, a piece of protective gear for one of the microscopes. And rather than say, "Oh, sorry, and my bad," she's still justified it. I'm just thinking, lady, I think you need to see a psychiatrist, because if you think the Klan's out to get you and everywhere, and there's no evidence, but you still insist, maybe you got paranoid schizophrenia. I don't know.
You know,
I think an optometrist might have been more prudent.
It's the old expression: if everywhere you go, everything smells like shit, check your shoe.
Yeah, I think an optometrist might have been more prudent than a psychiatrist, admittedly.
Yeah. To be fair, though, sorry, I was eating dinner. A little piece went down the wrong tube. Kind of reminds me of the South Park episode "You're Getting Old," where when you really look at it, I think that episode is taking jabs at both people. Like, yes, it's taking jabs at, you know, those cynical people, you know, that say, "Oh, everything is shit, nothing matters." But it is also kind of making fun of, you know, like those people that are like, they're like, no, it's actually genius when it's actually bad. Because I mean, even Kyle later admits, okay, so maybe the world is shit, but I don't want to see it that way.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, in my honest opinion, is just as bad as saying, "Oh, everything is shit, everything is terrible, and nothing matters." Because look, it's good to have an active imagination and always looking on the bright side of life, but when the Emperor has no clothes on, he doesn't have any clothes on.
Yeah. You have to see the world as it is before you can help make it to be the world you want to be.
Yeah.
So Shane, what's all this? What are all these weird stories coming out about extraterrestrial activity lately?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's just a resurgence, but it's the same old crap. All of the same optical illusions and everything else that people don't understand, and so their imaginations start running wild. Where they don't, you know, understand things like, you know, perspective and parallax and stuff like that. You know, like, hey, you're tracking this UFO and it's coming along here, and then all of a sudden it starts accelerating this other way really, really fast, and no object on the Earth can do that, and it must be an extraterrestrial vehicle or the camera moved.
Yeah.
Back, sorry, I had to get something to drink.
Sorry.
I love pizza, but there's always that one little bit of piece of crust that always has to slip down your windpipe instead of your esophagus.
And why is it so many times the last bite?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm still not 100%, but we couldn't really wait any longer to do this or it'd be the end of the month.
Oh, INV, going back to Avenue Q, I'm not gonna lie about that song Internet is for Porn. I think the Safe for Work version, My Social Life is Online, is actually, story-wise, it's actually better than the Internet is for Porn. Because for those of you that don't know, there's actually a Safe for Work version that's meant for elementary and middle schools, and while it still has its edgy humor, it cuts down on the swearing and sex jokes and what they did with Trekkie Monster, whereas in the original play, he was just a porn addict and a pervert, plain and simple. What they did is that he's a social online addict, basically.
Hey. Trekkie Monster was not a pervert.
Daniel, normal people don't spend all day looking at porn on the internet.
Oh, really?
You mean they
Yes,
don't?
You have no idea. Ready, normal people?
And before anyone asks, yes, I deliberately said that. Yeah. But Princeton, you sent me that sweet online birthday card. Yes, I did. Oh, but what do you think he did after?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ew! But yeah, that song in the PC in the Safe for Work version, it's called "Me Social Life is Online." It's actually still a pretty funny one. And actually, story-wise, I think it's a little better, Because in that one, he keeps harassing Kate Monster by saying, "Why won't you be my friend?" "Well, I am your friend, but you didn't like my social media posts." I mean, to be fair, don't get me wrong. I'm not against, social media, and I do think it does a lot of good, but, there is unfortunately some people that take it too seriously. But I will say this, I am kind of against some of those people that are saying we need to, restrict, social media so people will get out there. It's like, well, some people are socially awkward and it's easier for them to chat over the internet than it is in person, like me,
Yeah.
Like, I'm a chatty Cathy over these voice chats and all that, but if you were with me in person, I'd be spending most of the time just sitting absolutely quiet going, okay, yeah, just because I can't, I'm autistic. I don't know how to read the room properly, I just mimic what other people are doing.
I know that feeling.
Yep.
I mean, you should know that, Shane, because your son's autistic. I'm pretty sure he does the same thing, right?
Yeah, he's not all that verbal though, so it's a different thing entirely. He's just kind of in the room and he just kind of just follows along with everyone else, just kind of imitates them.
Just imitates, doesn't really talk unless he's spoken directly to.
Yeah, and then just answers kind of short sentences.
Yeah, like I said, I'm kind of the same way too, I mean, there's a little joke of when people talk to me about their personal problems, I spend most of the time just going, yeah, okay, oh, that's horrible, or, oh, okay. It's hard to believe, though I will say, I do kind of agree with something. You'd be surprised how many problems, you can solve on your own if you just have someone to talk to and vent to,
When I try to empathize with people, I get accused of making it about me.
No, a lot of times all you need is a sounding board.
Like, I've heard from actual therapists and psychiatrists on YouTube say there's a little bit of truth to that sometimes, some people can actually solve some of their minor personal issues themselves. They just need to vent it out, and after talking, quote unquote to themselves, for like a half hour, they realize, holy crap, that's what's been bothering me. And I think the reason why therapists help in that way is because when you think about it, one of the reasons why people don't want to talk about their problems is because they're afraid how other people are judging them. But therapists, their job is, listen, come to me with whatever you have, and as long as it's not something dangerous or super duper illegal that I'm required by law to report, say whatever you want. I won't judge you.
Well, it's a lot of times you don't even realize it. You think that the problem is this one thing, and you start talking about it, and then you kind of peel away the layers, and it turns out your problem is something different that was much deeper, and what you thought was a problem was just a symptom.
Admittedly, I don't see a therapist. I see a peer counselor, so it's a bit of a weird situation.
Yeah, I just have a wife.
Yeah.
How is Heather?
She's doing great. She's probably asleep right now. She had to get up at like 3:45 this morning. They moved her over to accounting, which basically means she has to be there first thing when they open. And
she's still going to work despite having COVID, huh?
Well, no, she went back. She was out for, I think she was out for 6 days, and then she had to wear a mask for the next 4. But yeah, those first few days of her going back were rough. But yeah, because I mentioned this before. Harris Teeter is owned by Kroger, but they've got their own corporate structure and they do things their own way. But for whatever reason, Kroger did something, and I forget the way she explained it, but they screwed up the whole accounting thing. And her manager is even more mad than she was about it. It was just like, they're not supposed to do this. They need to we do our own thing. But it basically meant that they couldn't do the close last night until something like 9:30 this morning. And of course, it all has to be done by noon. And so it was a crunch to get all the accounting done. I mean, she could count the tills and everything, but she couldn't actually. And her manager just told her, it's like, look, just do whatever you can. Everything else will resolve itself tomorrow.
Crunch time, huh?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, it reminds me of a funny thing that I saw from one commentator, because it was talking about, the controversy about crunch time within the game industry and all that. And one person brought up a pretty good point that they're talking about. Is like, people are like, well, how can we solve crunch time and all that? And he's like, well, you see, here's the thing. 90% of the time when they're trying to do crunch time, it's because they want the game to be released by some kind of special event like Christmas or something. But here's what I want to tell those people. A good game, like a really good game, should be able to sell on its own regardless of what time of the year it is. If you need a holiday to make that sales, something's up.
Well, I think it's not that they need the holiday to make the sales. It's just there's so much money around the holiday season, they want their share of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is that parents are probably only willing to buy games for their kids, in particular around the holidays.
Yeah.
But
especially the bigger purchases like game consoles. So they want the consoles to come around then.
What mandate? The mask mandates, or?
I'm not sure what he's talking about.
Yeah, Mr. Knows, like, have you heard they're trying to make like stupid mandates? Like, what mandates? They had a lot of mandates.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a mask mandate, the vaccine mandate. What else was there? There were a lot of mandates.
Yeah, I think you brought this up, but I think the reaction to COVID-19 is the reason why a lot of people are getting sick a lot lately, and many illnesses that normally used to just produce minor colds are actually producing much more severe symptoms, is because we were isolated for so long that our immune systems are shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because our immune systems are built around being social animals and trading germs with each other.
Yeah,
I'm amazed that Trudeau isn't gone already.
Yeah,
Of
speaking
course, I
of
said the same thing about Roy Cooper. No one understands how Roy Cooper got. He's the North Carolina governor. No one understands how he got reelected.
Yeah, there's a lot of politicians, that are so crazy that you're like, who put this person in power? Then again, the sad reality, and we do see this unfortunately with a lot of states, that are rural. It's typical for the governor or whatever to be appointed because the state's mostly rural. So all they need to do is win, the major city, which is usually the capital. And unfortunately, there's a trend that the people living in the capital, tend to want free stuff. So,
well, that's pretty much the case in North Carolina because half the population is in the Charlotte metro area, the Triad, and the Triangle. And then everywhere else is rural and especially farming country and things like that. And so there's always that.
I mean, I kind of know that's why Virginia's the way it is, why it has so many liberal politicians, and why they're trying to implement liberal reforms, even though most Virginians, are cliche, Southern conservatives. It's because the majority of them live in small rural or suburban areas, but the people with the voting power live in the cities, and those people tend to be Democrat.
And it's pretty much Arlington and Richmond.
Yep.
And Arlington might as well be Washington, D.C. I mean, it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and people wonder why a lot of libertarians and constitutionalists don't like democracy, because if we have direct democracy, that's basically what every single election is going to be,
Yep.
If you live in one of those small rural towns which only has a population of like 2,000 people, you might as well not even vote.
Well, and then you get really stupid. I mean, North Carolina is the perfect example of that because back when the Democrats were in power, they gerrymandered the absolute living fuck out of our districts. And it was one of those cases where everywhere in the country, whenever someone would do a story about gerrymandering and show you like the worst districts, at least 3 of them will be North Carolina districts, like this crinkly district that went up by 85 and stuff like that. So the Republicans finally get both houses. And I think it's the 2017 districts was the first ones that the Republicans got to draw. And yeah, they were gerrymandered. There was some dumb stuff there. But I mean, the Democrats were hitting the ceiling about it, and it's like, we remember. And they're actually a lot better. The new districts they've come up with are a lot better. And the Democrats are still going like, oh, they're gerrymandered. It's like, you're just complaining because your gerrymandered districts aren't there and you lost House seats.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, didn't you say this in your host state? Like, didn't they gerrymander like this one little slither of land just because they wanted a certain person in the state legislature?
Yeah. Melwatt.
Yeah.
That's that district that just snakes up I-85.
Yep.
But that first one the Republicans did, I mean, it was a lot better, but it was still pretty bad. I mean, it only looks better by comparison, but the one they have now is actually a lot more sane.
Also, I was having this conversation with Tim, aka Lord T Hawkeye, and we were talking about, the George Floyd incident, and Hawkeye brought up a pretty good point. There's actually a reason why George Floyd, why it got so much coverage, even though stuff like this happens all the time. You want to know why? Because it happened in a swing state.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see the pattern because I mean, a perfectly good example is mass shootings. Like, there's mass shootings in Texas, but they don't get anywhere near as much coverage as they do in other areas. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, Texans aren't giving up their guns no matter what. So
well,
there's
Uvalde
really no.
Did.
What?
Uvalde did.
Yeah. Wait, Uvalde's in Texas?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, with that one exception, though, Texans as a whole, they're not giving up their guns. And, you might be able to get away with a couple of towns, restricting guns. But the state as a whole, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
But you see, that's another idea of what you were talking about earlier, because Austin is basically, where all of the Democrats are in that state. And they're really trying to, push the policy changes there. Austin is very different from the rest of the state.
Oh, yeah.
But no one
I've
seems
seen
to want to point out that most of the mass shootings are actually in California.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of jokes. I've seen a lot of jokes from some Texans that jokingly say that they want to change the capital from Austin to a different area, and Austin should be its own thing. Yeah, Austin's no longer part of Texas; it's its own little city-state.
That's why there was a move to do that with California some years back. No one really expected it to go anywhere, but yeah,
I remember that they were going to split California into a few different states.
Yeah.
And then the politicians in Sacramento and the big cities were like, yeah, no, it's going to be someplace for people to leave, and then we can't get our taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is always the enemy of secession movements. It was that way with the American Revolution. It was that way with the Civil War. It's all about collecting the taxes. If this chunk of the country leaves, they won't be able to collect as much in taxes.
Yeah. I still find the Civil War funny about how people, say, we have proof that the Civil War was 100% about slavery, and then they say, well, why is that? Because of all these testimonies from famous Confederate States of American politicians. Okay, what did the personal diaries of the people or local activists say?
And what did the North say?
Yeah.
Because all the North had to do is just let them be and let them have their own country, and there would have been no war.
Oh, yeah, exactly,
That's what the war was really about. It wasn't about slavery or tariffs or anything else. It was about the right to secede. Everything else was secondary to that.
That's the thing that's a lot of pro, anti-secession people, don't want to acknowledge is that, listen, and Razorfist brought this up too when he did his debunking about Abraham Lincoln. It's like, listen, the South do not need to be the good guys to prove that the North was in the wrong.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Whether or not the South wanted to secede to keep their slaves, or whether they wanted to free them and give them all a lollipop and a puppy, it doesn't matter. The whole point is that the South said, we don't think you guys are representing us. We don't want to be a part of this union anymore. We're seceding. And the North said, oh, hell you are. You're not seceding. You're staying with us forever. Fun fact, if I recall correctly, a lot of states did have within their constitutions at the time, they said, we'll join the Union, but we also have to retain our right to leave the Union. But after the Civil War and Reconstruction, they said, nope, you got to change your state constitution. Once you're in the Union, you're stuck. You're in it.
Oh, yeah, they declared martial law and sent in the army to force the legislatures to change the constitutions.
Yeah, And the irony too is that when you think about it, Reconstruction and how the North treated the South is partially why the South was so racist for so long, is because they were under martial law, their economy was destroyed, and who was often enforcing it? The North. And what's even shocking is that the North often used black regiments to enforce these laws. So many Southerners didn't view weren't racist because whites are better. It's because they viewed blacks as symbols of Northern oppression. It's still wrong, but, it wasn't the white fragility that a lot of SJWs are trying to push.
Well, and what a lot of people fail to realize is it wasn't so much white Southerners who were racist, it was white Southern aristocrats. And when they were, when they were doing stuff like the poll taxes and stuff like that, and they were saying, well, they were trying to stop free blacks from voting. Yeah, they were. They were also trying to stop the poor farmers from voting.
Oh yeah,
like in Mississippi, if I remember correctly, the years are 1860 and 1900. There were fewer registered voters in Mississippi in 1900 than there were in 1960, even though the population had doubled. And that wasn't all black people. That was also a lot of poor white people who couldn't meet, the literacy requirements for voting.
And immigrants.
And immigrants too. But it's all about these aristocracies trying to preserve their power.
Yeah, And I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard from some people say that's actually the reason why the Confederacy kind of became associated with slavery, was because they wanted to secede for other reasons, but unfortunately they, a lot of the legislators lacked the connections and the money to do so, so they had to appease to the white to the white slave masters because at the time they were the most powerful both financially and politically. You know, it was still the wrong thing to do if true, but you know, it's that's what I try to tell people is that you got to at the very least try to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you don't have to agree with them, but you have to understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, then, in all honesty, you're just as bad as they are. Because that's another thing, too, that I bring up, you know, a lot when discussing about the Civil War. It's like, you know, you have to remember, even if, you know, the politicians and the super rich were in it to keep their slavery, you have to remember the average Southerner was not a racist, you know, slave owner. They were just simple farm people, and they were hearing stories about the Union imposing blockades and burning down fields. They just wanted to protect their land. You know, that's actually one that this isn't about the Civil War, but it's about World War II. But that's actually one video I kind of disagree with TIK on, was when he was talking about why the Germans kept fighting until the very end, even when the war seemed hopeless. And he theorized it was because of National Socialist ideology that says struggle is good. I think it's just boiling down to the plain simple fact that the Soviets were raping and pillaging their countryside. You know, if you're a German and you see a Soviet burn down and pillage your shops and businesses, are you just going to say, well, my country's being led by a racist evil man, so I better just let them go away, let them have their way? No, you're gonna raise arms.
Yep.
I mean, if I recall correctly, a lot of German militias, they kept fighting even after the German government officially surrendered. It wasn't until the Americans and the British arrived, who were a little bit more lenient on them, that they finally said, okay, we'll throw our arms down, because we tried to tell them, okay, we're not here to conquer you, we're not going to rape and pillage you, we just want the fighting to stop.
Yeah, because the Soviets were completely horrible about it. And
oh, yeah.
SKM says that's why we need technology to make guns. We've always had the technology to make guns, but you've always had to have, you know, a certain skill set to do it. And what they're afraid about now is that 3D printing is putting the ability to make guns into the hands of the everyman. And that's what they've always been afraid of. But I mean, from the start of this country, it has always been, you know, even at the height of all the gun control stuff, they never really went against people making their own firearms, because they knew that they would have had no constitutional basis for it, based on how this country was formed, and you know how the independence was one of what was always respected from the rights of people. But now all of a sudden, ghost guns, and now it's something your rights don't go away just because they get easier to exercise.
Yeah. I don't know why we were allied with the Soviets in the first place. Unfortunately, it's that old mantra, and then the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
The enemy of...
Well, and I don't think the British were quite the enemy of the Soviets that the US was. And so I think it was a lot easier for the UK to get into an alliance with them. And then after Pearl Harbor, when the US went to war with Japan, we allied with Britain, and that kind of automatically meant we allied with Russia.
Well, and as TIK history pointed out, that there was actually a political, well, apart from the fact that there were actual confirmed, you know, communists within the U.S. government that were sympathetic towards the Soviet Union, there was also a fact that I remember reading somewhere there actually was kind of an anti-British sentiment among some of the political leaders, because they thought, it's like, hey, if this war takes off, Britain is going to be crippled economically speaking. That means the American markets can take over and make a buttload of money. And they didn't view this.
Also, like, the whole weird domino effect, kind of similar to World War I, about okay, so Germany is at war with France, and that means they're at war with England. Then they came to war with Russia, and they had the agreement with Japan. And then the U.S. went to war with Japan, and that meant Japan declared war against the U.S., which, because of their treaty with Germany, meant that Germany declared war against the U.S., and because Germany was also at war with with the Soviet Union. That meant the U.S. had to ally with the Soviet Union. And it's that whole mess you get from the entangling alliances, all these mutual defense treaties. That's the only reason you've ever had world wars.
I mean, I remember seeing one person say this about World War One. It was like, here's how it worked. Here's how it worked. Austria ignited the sparks. Russia declaring war on Austria, which caused Germany to declare war. That's when World War One became a European war. But Britain was the one that made it into a world war. Because when Britain declared war on Germany after 1914, not only did they bring a lot of their colonies in Canada, South Africa, and the like, into there, because of their political connections, they basically were going around telling the rest of the world, saying, "Oh, look at what this evil German Empire is doing. You better support the Allies. Even if you don't have to get involved militarily, but you have to support us politically or economically, or else we're cutting you off from British moolah." Which caused many countries, which had previously had no qualms with Germany, to suddenly tell Germany, you're not allowed here anymore. That's why, in all honesty,
it's weird to me how Germany got the big blame for World War I when they had nothing to do with how it started.
Yeah, and the only reasoning that they have, and even TIK history is a little guilty about this, is they said, well, they invaded France and did some damage to it. It's like, yeah, but look, don't look me in the face and say France wasn't doing anything. In fact, the French had a plan. They had a plan for when a war was to invade Germany. The only difference is that the Germans struck first. I mean, that was the whole point of the Schlieffen Plan, was because France was literally right next to their doorstep, and they feared if we focus on Russia, who was their real enemy in the war, not necessarily France. The fear was that, but if we focus on Russia and leave France alone, France is just going to attack us anyway. We got to get France out before they attack us. Like, I'm not saying Germany was actually secretly the good guys or anything, but when you actually read about, the internal politics of World War, you can't fully blame Germany for making some of the decisions it made. Like, another perfectly good example is, unrestricted submarine warfare. So many people said, but what about unrestricted submarine warfare? Germany only did that because when you look at it, they had no choice. They tried multiple times to reestablish outside connections. There was actually a group, led by American and German businessmen that were trying to contact the British saying, hey, could you at the very least lift the blockade, for non-military goods? Because literally Britain had a blockade around Imperial Germany, and no one, not even merchant vessels, were allowed in. And Britain more or less said, anyone that's caught trying to trade with Germany will face the wrath of the British Navy. That's actually another reason why a lot of nations broke ties with Germany, because they didn't want to risk it. I'm sorry, but the blockade of Germany, I am shocked to find out why that's not a war crime, because like in both World War I and World War II, the British blockade of Germany, it led to millions of people, not just Germans, but like Greeks and others, it led to millions of them starving to death.
Well, that's always the case with sanctions.
Yeah. And in all honesty, I really want to ask those tacticians, like, why is that going to work? Because, we have to try to demoralize them so they'll try to surrender. It's like, look, I'm no expert in anything, but if I recall correctly, that's only going to make it worse. It's like, those SWAT teams that think it's like, oh, I know how we can convince the guy to surrender. What's that? We're going to shut down the AC when it's 109 degrees outside. We're going to turn off the plumbing. We're going to make it so he doesn't have access to food, water, and that he'll never sleep at all. And then he'll have to come out. It's like, no, if you do all that, that's going to drive him crazy, and that's going to make him more irrational.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be hot, he's not going to have any clean water, so he's going to be really thirsty, and he's not even going to get a good night's sleep, so he's not going to be thinking properly. I mean, I don't know why people think that. It's like...
I mean, why do people think torture works to get accurate information again?
Yeah.
We've only known for like 3,000 years that it doesn't.
Like, that's another thing too about special interrogation training. That's the reason why we shouldn't be torturing, and it kind of goes back to what I said about evil never paying out, because the reason why torture is a bad thing is because not only is it morally wrong to do to another human being, when you really think about it, it's not reliable. If you're poking and prodding that guy and burning him and all that, and all, then you tell us, where are the rebels hiding? He's gonna say anything to make it stop,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna say, okay, we're on Dantooine. And then you go there, you spend all this taxpayer dollar to go to Dantooine to search for the rebels. There's nobody there.
Well, that's exactly what happened with Bush in the second Iraq War. It was, he wanted to blame, 9/11 on Iraq, and he wasn't going to hear anything else. So you had these, whatever they were called, special interrogation techniques or whatever the newspeak term for torture was.
Yeah.
And everyone kept saying, no, Saddam has nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam's against the terrorists. He's fighting the terrorists. He had nothing to do with 9/11. But you torture him enough until they finally say, okay, yeah. Just to make the torture stop, Saddam did 9/11, and that was the big intel. And also the WMDs. Oh yeah, now we've got the intel that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. Of course he didn't.
I think another infamous example of now granted it doesn't involve torture, but it still involves interrogation, was that case against that preschool that sparked the satanic panic in the 1980s. It was all those children that said it's like, oh yeah, I was molested at school, and like there was this big movement to say we gotta listen and believe what the children are saying. But then it was later turned out that none of those children had been molested. I said, but then why did they confess? And they took a look at the interrogation methods, and basically the psychiatrists were not letting the kids go. Like they were saying, nope, you're staying here until you see what we want. And they kept saying, no, I wasn't touched in my bathing suit area. And they were like, are you sure? No, I wasn't touched in my bathing suit area. Are you sure? When am I gonna go home? Where were you touched? I wasn't touched there. Where were you touched? Okay, he touched me in my bathing suit area. Can I go home now?
Yeah.
That's basically what it was.
Also, if you do that, even if you do that with an adult, you can create a false memory of that happening.
Yeah.
Because that was what was happening with those daycares where, they take the children out into secret areas for their satanic rituals involving animal sacrifices.
Yeah.
And they just kept, asking him about it over and over and over and over again, week after week after week after week. And you do that, and just the way human memory works, they'll remember the image that conjures up. Someone asks you a question, your brain conjures up an image and then tries to make a match to it. And it doesn't match, and so you don't remember. But after time, it can remember that image as though it were a memory. And, your brain fills in the details with, what your own perspective and everything. So like when they asked the kids what animals were being sacrificed, they didn't say, like goats and chickens, which is what it would have been. They said, elephants and giraffes and stuff like that, because those are, the animals the kids like to draw and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
that's
those
actually
were the animals they were going to,
I remember seeing something about a person that talks about this, about how to help people with painful memories, and he says one thing you need to do to make sure that they're not forming a false memory is, apart from not leading them on, but also make sure that the story they're telling you doesn't match some sort of pop media or something that was popular at the time. Because going back to the satanic panic, a lot of people were telling stories about how, oh yeah, I was possessed by Satan and I did this and that and this and that, and some psychologists were saying, wait a minute, that sounds very eerily similar to that famous scene from The Exorcist, which was popular around that time.
Yeah. Michael Shermer did this analysis of alien abductions and how people, and how people describe the aliens. And I mean, the whole gray alien thing, with the big head and the two slit eyes. What was the guy's name? Whitley Schreiber or something like that, when he described it. It was only when that got popular they were doing that. But he had a whole timeline up of how the aliens looked over time. And like there was one point in the 1950s that coincided with the Looney Tunes cartoons where people described the aliens as looking like Gossamer. The big red hair monster.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
Gosselaar
saw an
was one
alien.
of 'em.
I saw an alien one time. Oh, what did he look like? Well, he was dressed like a Roman legionary. He had a helmet, and it's weird because even though he had eyes, he didn't have a nose or a mouth, yet he could still talk.
If that's a
get-
reference to something, I'm not getting it.
That's Marvin the Martian.
Oh,
How do you know
okay.
Gossamer, but you don't know Marvin?
I
Yeah.
just wasn't picturing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible. He said he was gonna blow up Earth. What? Why would he do that? He says it got in the way of his view of Venus.
But they've also made a correlation with in the 20th century with the rise of science fiction, it was alien abductions. Before that, it was demonic possession. But there's so many similarities between the alien abduction stories and the demonic possession stories that whatever it is in the brain, that makes you think that something like that has happened, you interpret it in the light of whatever is prominent at the time.
Yeah, it reminds me of this really funny story.
It sounds somewhat like what's called the mean world effect.
I don't recall that one off the top of my head.
Where it's related to cultivation theory, and don't quote me on this. Like, look it up yourself if you want. Basically, the idea is that television gets people to believe the world is more dangerous than it actually is.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Because like if you look at, like we were talking about mass shootings earlier, look at how absolutely freaked out people are about mass shootings, even though there's such a freak occurrence that your kid being killed in a school shooting, the chances of your kid being killed in a school shooting is basically zero.
Yep.
I mean, it's down in the decimal points. You've got so many more things to worry about.
Yeah, but according to the pop media and all that, every person with a mental illness is planning on shooting up your children's school. Everyone else is trying to kidnap your children, and every single disease and virus out there will make your penis fall off and you'll die a painful death.
Yeah, I mean, pedophiles are another one. The pedophile lurking around, trying to tempt the kid. And as rare as pedophilia is, that is like the rarest of the rare type of pedophiles. Most of them abuse, someone they know, someone in the family or whatever.
And here's another thing too. Like I saw an episode. I think it was from that old Nat Geo show Taboo, but they actually interviewed
Hey, Shane, do not dismiss that. Nambla's ranks are in the dozens.
I was about to say, like they interviewed an actual pedophile, but
wait. Which Nambla are you talking about? The National Association of Marlon Brando lookalikes?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, of course.
Well, okay. I was gonna say they interviewed an actual pedophile for like Taboo, I think it was. Now they blurred out his face and all that, and but they did follow him around and show that he was actually a normal guy, and he admitted, he had feelings for young children. But here's the thing, though, he's never attempted to act out on them, and he does see psychological help. He goes to his therapist, especially when he's having a really bad episode and he's trying to live his life, and he doesn't want and he totally agrees, people that actually harm children should be punished, but he hates the stigma that it's like, oh, if you have these feelings for children, you're gonna commit to them. You're actually gonna do it. It's like, no, I am doing my damnedest not to do it, but you guys are making it harder because I'm afraid to open up to it because I'm afraid I'm gonna get arrested.
But just think about how many times you have just wanted to kill someone. You've just wanted to wring their necks. Of course, you were never going to actually do it.
Yeah,
but we don't act on those feelings because almost all of us have a moral center that stops us.
Shane, I'm honestly remembered of one of your old responses to Simon Whistler.
Which one?
The one where you compared him to Socrates.
Oh yeah. Only Lord Killian could make that an insult.
Yeah.
You know what's a funny thing about Simon Whistler is that from what I've heard from a lot of people, he actually doesn't believe in a lot of the videos he does. He actually has editors who write the videos for him, and they put their personal views in, because there's actual things like The Casual Criminalist, where he's actually freeborn and he doesn't script it. He just literally reads what he is there, and he throws his 2 cents in, and he doesn't always agree politically with some of the statements being made.
But I mean, I think if that's the case, you kind of need to make that clear.
Yeah.
Because if you say, "Hi, I'm Simon Whistler," and bop-a-dop-a-dop-a-dop-a-dop, then you're basically saying that's your opinion.
Yeah, you know, he does need to be more open by saying, you know.
And I mean, it's
like
different from like those videos where, you know, someone does the editing, someone else does the script writing, a third person does the voiceovers. I mean, you know, in those cases that, you know, the person who does the voiceovers is just doing it because they're a professional voiceover artist. They don't necessarily believe what, you know, they're saying.
Yeah.
But if you put, "Hi, I'm Simon Whistler," and bop it up, you know, it's a different thing.
You know, speaking of, like this whole, like, you know, of the acting and all that for cult, I saw this one funny joke. It was about Captain America and the joke about cultural appropriation. How now it's like only people of, you know, who are of the same race, sexual orientation, or of the same ideology should play the role that they're suiting. And many people are saying, well, then they need to recast Captain America, because the actor who plays him is not a freedom-loving person. He's a statist tyrant, which is true. The irony is that, if I recall correctly, I can't remember his name, the actor who plays Captain America in the Marvel
Which
movies,
one?
he has the newer ones. The Avengers ones, he has some very
the Falcon Captain America, or the Civil War Captain America. The Captain America up through Endgame.
I'm talking about I think, what's his name?
Chris something.
Chris Evans. Chris Evans. Yeah.
Yeah. I was about to say Chris Pine. I'm like, no, it wasn't Chris Pine.
Yeah, because Chris Evans is very anti-American in his political views. I mean, he supported Hillary Clinton in 2016. He's all in favor of an assault weapons ban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the whole point of acting. You're not playing the same kind of person, you know.
I say in order to stop cultural appropriation, you need to fire Chris Evans as Captain America.
And
how could you ever cast the Joker with those standards?
Yeah.
And I am demanding my role as Daredevil, okay?
I actually once thought of an idea for that. It's a horror comedy. It's a horror comedy that takes that logic, and the way it is that they're going to shoot a slasher film, but of course, their diversity board says, however, in order to show diversity and inclusion within the workplace, the serial killer must be played by an actual psychopath who has a long history of violence. And you can all guess how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like that movie Shadow of the Vampire, where they hire an actual vampire to play the role, and he ends up killing almost everyone except the director.
It basically sounds like a more mundane version of Shadow of the Vampire.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, imagine that. It's like all the co-stars are lined up, and like the killer's there, and like he's looking at them saying, "Hey, people, you ever seen what a person's organs look like after you remove them and hang them up on a wire for 3 days?"
Yes, why do you ask?
Yeah. Yeah, then it's like, I refuse to play this scene. What, it's the scene where you stab the girl in the shower. What do you got a problem with this? This knife you gave me, it's fake. Well, yeah, it's a prop. No. I only use real knives. particularly those extra long butcher knives, and not the ones that are for chopping vegetables. Those don't work. How would you know that? Experience. Yeah, I saw a joke like that one time. It was like a horror comedy where like a guy's being chased by a psycho killer, and the killer stabs him, but he finds out he's barely getting in there, and he's like, "What? Why isn't this butcher knife working?" And the guy's like, well, for two reasons. One, that knife is really dull, and two, that's not a butcher knife, that's a vegetable knife. Yeah, it's funny that the killer always uses a butcher knife, because if I recall correctly from some people, they say that butcher knives in real life, like, if you were to use them as improvised weapons, they're not really good at that.
Yeah, they're kind of designed for like when you have a lot of time to work on it. And
yeah, they're meant for going. They're meant through going through.
They're not like a
flesh.
katana or anything like that. They're just gonna slice through it like it's butter.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. You know, I mean, people fail to realize swords and knives for military self-defense. They are designed to cut not just through flesh, but through bones and all the tendons you're going to come across. You know.
Well, I mean, whereas if you're a butcher, you're a little more precise about it. You know exactly where to cut, you know, to avoid the bones and slice through everything properly. And
you're
also going to take more time about it.
Because that's another thing too. Like I've seen like those ASMR cooking videos and all them. Like they show you how to butcher an animal, and if you look at those videos of the butchers, you know, they're not saying, and then you chop right straight through the bones. No, they say, now what you want to do is hold this little piece and carefully cut around the bones.
Well, you don't want to get the bone embedded in the meat is the thing.
Well, that and you don't want to ruin the bones because you can make good soup out of them.
Yeah.
And you also don't want to ruin the blade of the knife on the bone.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, there's a reason why, you know, when you like buy the chicken from the store, the drumstick is separate from the thigh, which is separate from the other parts, and as opposed to getting like half a drumstick or something.
Yeah. By the way, I was watching one of those channels. I think it was by Epicurious, and I learned something very, very interesting. If you're gonna butcher a chicken, don't forget the oysters. And no, the oysters aren't the inappropriate parts of the chicken. They're like these little balls that are like in the shoulders.
Oh, I thought it was the snode. You know, the little bit that hangs from the beak.
No, that's something else. Yeah, the oysters, they're like these little balls. I think like they're like part of the tendon system or something. They're located like within the shoulders of a chicken. The guy who was butchering them says that they actually, if you cut them out and deep fry them, they make really good deep frying food or something. And he jokingly says the reason why almost nobody's heard about them is because their grandmother was always hogging it because it's a very popular food with older generations. Hey, Shane, random question. You're in your 50s, right? Do you have a craving for liver and onions?
Not really. I like the daily onions, but
yeah.
I don't know how that became a stock yuck meme.
Yeah. Well, that's a joke I saw. That's a joke I saw somebody when someone's having a midlife crisis because he's turning 50 and he's having a midlife crisis. It's like, oh no, gray hairs, here's this, that, and oh no, I'm developing a craving for liver and onions. I'm old.
Yeah, my big problem is when I'm out in the sun, I turn like I start to change color and grow little white hairs on me.
So you're an onion.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Ogres, they're like onions. They stink? Yes. No.
They make you cry?
Yeah. Yeah. Layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers.
That doesn't look so much like a lair. It looks more like just a little isolated hut in a swamp. Sorry, really bad pun.
Cake! Everybody likes cakes. Cakes have layers.
I don't care what everybody likes. Ogres are not like cakes.
Controversial take. Does anyone think Shrek would have been funnier if he had been voiced by an actual Scotsman?
I think they should have gone with an actual ogre.
I mean, I know when you're voicing a fantasy character, you don't have to do a realistic accent.
Yeah.
And Shane, I've heard your Scottish accent. You're not really one to talk.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No,
and
that's just me being silly.
And those damn
You
eyebrows.
You forget my stepfather was Scottish.
You know, it's what
know what a Scottish accent sounds like.
You know what's really funny? Like, I understand about the Scottish accent, but so many people say it's like, oh, that's a, everyone knows, they think that they know what a British or an Irish accent sounds like, but according to actual British and Irish YouTubers I've seen, there's dozens of Irish and British dialects.
Yeah, same with Scottish. If you're from Glasgow, you sound differently if you're from Edinburgh, or if you're from the Highlands.
Yeah.
There are different Scottish accents too. There's all sorts of differences. Oh, I mean, you don't even get out of London without British accents varying all over the place.
And speaking of accents and all that, I actually once met a British person who actually defended Dick Van Dyke's British accent, because so many people are like, oh, Dick Van Dyke is bad and he just does a bad Cockney accent. But when you really think about it, it actually makes sense for him to do that, because not a lot of people fail to realize Dick Van Dyke, when he was playing British characters, almost all of them were of lower class people. And when you think about it, lower class people at the time, that's how they talked.
Yeah, no, it's still a bad Cockney. British people really laugh at him for that one.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's any defending that accent.
I mean, heck, we kind of see this. We kind of see this. With the film My Fair Lady and all that. Rex Harrison is going around, and by the way, these guys are actual British actors, and they're speaking in the stereotypical posh British accent, and how that's the proper way to speak it. Everyone there's talking with Cockney, and a lot of people around him are talking with Cockney accents, and he's like, that's not how British are supposed to speak.
Although I don't think Audrey Hepburn had the best Cockney. Remember, I forget why Julie Andrews didn't play her in the movie, but I think she had like another commitment or something. But would have been a lot better because she played her on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, fun fact about My Fair Lady, Seth MacFarlane did an interview one time because a lot of people were jokingly saying, Stewie really wants to kill his mother Lois, why is that? Is there something wrong with you? And also, why is he British when both his parents are American? And he said, well, because I modeled Stewie after Rex Harrison and My Fair Lady.
And now I'm just reminded of that episode of Family Guy that was like the British version of Family Guy, where Stewie had the Southern accent.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But fun fact, you had the songs in like My Fair Lady and Dr. Dolittle and all the other things the Rex Harrison could do. They were written as patter because Rex Harrison couldn't actually sing. So like if you watch My Fair Lady on the stage, they're proper songs that are sung, but he's just doing it as patter.
Going back to My Fair Lady, I loved that movie a lot as a kid and all that. And looking back now, I don't know if it was the original writer's intention, because I know it was originally a stage play, but part of me likes to think, I think the secret joke about My Fair Lady is that when you really think about it, the cliche British accent, that's actually the one that's fake. All the upperclassmen are just deliberately training themselves to talk like that so they can gain social status, when the reality is that British people, like anywhere else, they have all sorts of different languages and dialects.
Yeah, I think that's probably what Shaw was going for.
Yeah.
If you ever seen Pygmalion on the stage, it's actually a lot better. My Fair Lady, sadly, is not Pygmalion plus songs. They made a lot of changes to it. But, yeah. Like they tried to shoehorn it in as like a kind of a tangential love story between, Liza and Henry. Old Civil War movies, and it sounds like a variation of the British accent. Yeah, Hollywood did that for a long time. They called it the Mid-Atlantic accent,
Yeah.
Like Katharine Hepburn always talked like this.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole classic, why can't the English teach their children how to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah. Reminds me of that joke I read that one time. It's that old joke about how an upper class British school teacher who works as a finishing school is in America visiting relatives, and she's on the train. She meets a Texas gentleman, and the Texas gentleman, being polite, goes, "Hey, yo, man, where y'all heading?" And she replies, "Oh, you Americans don't know how to speak. You never end a sentence with a proposition." So the Texan thinks it over and he says, "Where are y'all heading, bitch?"
Yeah, I've heard a few variations on that one.
Yeah. The variation I've always heard is this Southerner going up to Harvard, and so he asks someone, "Hey, where's the bathroom at?" "Oh, you'd never," end a sentence with a preposition. "All right, where's the bathroom at, asshole?"
Yeah.
Which I kind of ran out of grammar subjects. That was fun for a while doing those in the quickies, but yeah, that's not an actual English rule.
No, by the way, apparently, Audie Hepburn didn't even sing in the thing. She was dubbed by someone called Marnie Nixon.
Yeah. They do that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a storm. I doubt you can hear it over the mic, but
Yeah, I can't hear a thing.
yeah, this is what North Carolina weather does to us.
You don't have to tell me.
Oh god, it was like we had like a week of really nice weather, and then at my daughter's open house at her school, which she really wanted to go to, it picked that moment for like one of the worst storms we have had in years. Like 60, 70 mile an hour winds dumped on us right as I got there, and we couldn't even get out of the car. We just had to sit there, wait for the storm to have a little break in it, and go home. There was going to be a break of like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be right back. Just have to take care of something.
And we were just right outside the school. We just walk in, except couldn't even get 2 steps out of the car. What would society be like if women outnumbered men 5-1? Kind of weird. How would that work? Just relationship wise, how? I mean, genetically, it wouldn't be sustainable, would it?
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have to be one of the.
Not if you're considering monogamous couples.
Yeah, it'd probably be one of those societies where the men would have to be encouraged. It's like, okay, you got to take on multiple wives and you got to have children with all of them if possible, because if not, we're all doomed.
I'm just trying to think of how long it would take evolution to correct for that.
Yeah. I mean, if I recall correctly, that's the reason why polygamy was so popular, throughout most of history, even in Christendom, was because this was during a time where infant mortality rates were extremely high. So it just made sense. If you had the money and the resources, yeah, get as many wives as you can and have as much children with them. That way, by sheer statistics, some of them are bound to survive and inherit, your legacy.
That was always the weird thing, to me about when the whole gay marriage debate was going on. It says, well, in the Bible it says marriage is between one man and one woman. It's like, you haven't read the Old Testament, have you?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, didn't King David have multiple wives?
A lot of people had multiple wives.
Yeah,
it's throughout the Old Testament.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but what about the story of Bathsheba? If I recall correctly, David was only scolded by God, not because he wanted her, but because she was already married, and he basically more or less killed another guy to get her. That's what God was mad at. It wasn't that he wanted her; it's that she was already taken, and he basically stole her. Like, I'm pretty sure if she was single and not married to anyone in David's Twitter, God would have been like, "Oh yeah, fine, go ahead, marry her. Screw that broad."
Well, that's like all the people who think that, and for like centuries they've said this, the Bible, God condemns masturbation in the Bible, and it's like, there's not a single place where he does that. The verses they point to, it's not actually masturbation, it's the withdrawal method of birth control. And it's only wrong in those particular cases because God ordered the man to have a child with the woman, and he didn't. He was, using withdrawal so that he wouldn't have a child, and that's what God was angry about.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted you to have a child with that woman, you idiot. And besides, pulling out doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Well, that's also the dumb part of the Bible.
Yeah, it's like, and also that doesn't even work anyway. What? Pulling out isn't actually a reliable form of birth control? Hell yeah! How do you think Jesus got conceived? Huh? What was that, Dad? Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, what? I'm pregnant? Oh, I'm a virgin. How did that happen? Must be a miracle.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of funny anecdotal stories from, like, the doctors/nurses of Reddit that see that. It's a classic case. The 15, 16-year-old girl comes in. She's suffering. She hasn't had her period in a while time, and she's suffering from nausea and all the ordinary stuff. Naturally, first thing we got to test for a pregnancy test. Parents are like, "Oh no, my daughter is a pure angel. She would never do that." Well, we gave her some pregnancy tests. They all came back positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like the old son of a gun myth.
Yeah.
From the Civil War.
Yeah, it's like, well, she must have maybe accidentally, sat on something, that a guy, that a filthy guy, just all. It's like, nope. And then 5 weeks later, they apologize, saying, yeah, she confessed.
Well, because the proper Yankee gentleman would never inseminate a Southern woman. So what must have happened was a Johnny Reb must have shot him in the nutsack, and then the bullet must have gone from there into the woman's belly, into the womb, and impregnated her.
Yeah. Although, contrary to popular belief, that's not where the term son of a gun came from. Son of a gun has historically been used to refer to an illegitimate child of a soldier or a sailor. Basically, it's the masculine equivalent of son of a bitch, where son of a bitch is intended to insult your mother, son of a gun is intended to insult your father. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like all the crazy stories they came up with to avoid just the usual, they had sex out of wedlock. Deal with it.
Yeah. By the way, I love how Monty Python, predicted SJW culture back in the 1980s with, I think it was, the meaning of life, where after the woman gives birth, she's like, wait a minute, is my baby a boy or a girl? And he's like, well, isn't it a little too early to be assigning it roles?
God.
Though, to be fair, from what I understand, from what Shane's told me, that idea has always kind of sort of been better on. It's just that back in those days, believe it or not, most people, including second wave feminists, said that that idea is stupid, and it's only now that people have rediscovered it, and they're like, hey, that makes me feel better about myself.
I still like the irony of one of the main, con artists who first was pushing that idea was Dr. Money. That was his name. Look it up. The one who did the one who they had done the botched circumcision.
Oh yeah,
and
that
said,
one
we'll
Canadian
just turn
guy.
the child into a girl because then if you raise him as a girl, he won't know any different.
Yeah, and then they're like, yeah, something's wrong with our daughter. What's that? Well, he doesn't like girly stuff. He's spending more time with guys. He's playing with them. He's playing with his brother's action figures and all that. You know what's the worst part about that story is that he kind of won in a way, because instead of people realizing, holy crap, this whole idea that gender is all about nurture and not nature wasn't debunked. All the Canadian government did was say, okay, from now on we're gonna heavily restrict circumcision now. Yeah, that story is a
There's
story
so many
example.
shows out there. One of them was bound to say something close, but Monty Python was always like that. Like in Holy Grail, how Stan wanted to be Loretta, so we could have babies.
That's Life of Brian, not Holy Grail.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Life of Brian. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to have babies. But
you want to have babies? You can't have babies.
It's like,
hey, don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Yeah, it's like,
well, but you don't have a womb. Where's if he is going to gestate? You're going to keep it in a box?
How about this? How about we acknowledge that he can't have women, but he has the right to have children? Right?
What's the point? What's the point of fighting in his right for having babies? You've got to have babies.
It's the message and all that. Yeah.
That's symbolic of our struggle against impression. Symbolic of his struggle against reality.
Yeah. Like, yeah, and that's another thing, too, that I hate about the trans movement and all that. It's like, listen, we are not against people transitioning and all that. The problem we're against is you forcing us to conform to that. Like, no joke, there's people literally pushing for laws that say if you deliberately misgender someone, you're going to go to jail.
Well, it's the ones that, I mean, someone who has properly, made the move from male to female, they're going to present as female. They're going to get my female pronouns. You look at them. I mean, even if you do catch on that, she used to be a man, you're still probably going to just call her.
Yeah.
But the problem is the kind of the trans trenders who aren't really trans, but they're just grabbing attention, and they've got 5-day-old stubble and a deep face voice going. They're going, you better call me ma'am, or else you're misgendering me.
I mean, yeah, there's actually kind of a movement to that where there's guys that deliberately do that. They deliberately, say, yeah, I'm trans and I'm a woman now, but they deliberately go out of their way to look as masculine as possible, and that's kind of the joke, Like they show, like, you know, there's that movement, you know, where they deliberately, you know, enlist in women's sports and all that, and like they have the beard, like they're the most manliest men you'll ever meet, and they're like, yeah, I identify as a woman, so you can't reject me from this sport. And then they go on to pretty much dominate the entire sporting ring. And here's the thing, people, it's not, you know, patriarchal people saying, oh, women as a whole are too weak to compete with men in sport. Like, it's actual women saying that. Like, there are women athletes saying, yeah, you know, we are losing titles and opportunities because these guys that have been, because these quote-unquote women that have been men for 30 plus years, so they still have a lot of the biological advantages of being men, are just dominating them, you know?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same reason why you have weight classes in wrestling.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, it's not.
Put a
Yeah,
featherweight against the heavyweight's gonna win.
Yeah, the heavyweight's gonna knock him down with one punch. You know. I mean, Joe Rogan even brought that up because he's seen, you know, trans athletes, you know, enter the MMA ring, and he says a lot of these trans women, they don't know how to prop fight properly, yet they're going up against these women who are fighters, they know how to fight properly, and they're just kicking the butt out of these women, you know. Like, there was that one match between that one trans woman and that one regular woman, and, you know, the regular woman, in terms of technique and practice and all that, she was a superior fighter, but the trans woman who was more sloppy and all that was just dominating her, and the reason why was because, you know, even though they had undergone surgery and all that, they still had the masculine physique, they still had the muscle and bone density, so the woman's punches weren't having much of an effect, meanwhile, when the trans woman threw a punch, she was hurting her.
That was a Monty Python sketch as well from the Flying Circus days when, you know, Connie Booth trains to fight John Cleese, and he just kind of punches her down effortlessly, and she tries to run after, punches her down again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, people. You know, you can identify what you want, but there's only so much you can do. You know. I've even seen people say it's like, well, you know, they're working on artificial wombs, so yes, you know, women who are once men can have babies. I've actually heard actual biologists say, no, that is not impossible, because yes, externally you're a woman, but internally you're still a man, and even if you had an artificial womb, you do not have the hormones and the body mass needed to carry a baby to term. You know,
and
a baby
you also don't have the configuration of your hip bones wide enough to pass the child's head.
Yeah, you know, there would be, one doctor said, you know, that while it would be plausible, the baby probably wouldn't survive, and there would be so many health complications, you know, that it's just not working, you know.
And you'd have to deliver by C-section, even if the rest of it did work.
Yeah, you know, you'd have to deliver it by C-section. There'd be no way for the placenta to properly come out of, so therefore the person would have to be under surgery for several hours to get it out. Otherwise, it's going to rot and cause an infection. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, people. You can feel whatever you want, but you can't just, you know, deny millions of years of biological evolution. You know.
Yep. But they do exactly that.
I mean, you know, and it's just simple. Like, you know,
I mean,
some
they're
people
probably between that and they're railing everything against evolutionary psychology. They're probably a more potent anti-evolution force now than the creationists.
Yeah, it's just stupid. You know, it's like, but I hate it. You know, and I hate it when they use their feelings. It's like, you know, but I want to feel like a woman. I just want to feel like I'm being invalidated. Well, you know what? I don't want to fall down and hit my head when I trip down the stairs, but unfortunately, we have a little thing called gravity.
Well, I mean, look, you have the right to feel however you want. Feel however you feel, that's perfectly valid. You know, live your life how you want to live, that's perfectly valid. But like we said earlier, you've got to see the world as it is, so you can see how it differs from the world as you want it to be and act accordingly.
Yep, to quote the old fable, you're not wearing any clothes on. Yeah, you're not wearing an elegant dress made out of a fabric that's invisible to idiots and the foolish. You're just naked.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the thing that, it's pretty funny because I read the original story and apparently, like, a lot of, children's plays like to portray the Emperor as being, like in his underclothes. It's like, nope, in the original story, and they flat out stated he's butt naked.
Butt naked.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the Lady Godiva story where they have it where her hair is so long that it covers everything. Nope. That was not how it was.
Fun fact, same thing with Jesus. A lot of portrayals of Jesus on the cross show him as having that cloth over there, but according to actual people that study Roman punishment, nope, if you were crucified, they took everything off you because it was supposed to be humiliating. It was, the reason why
they were also supposed to die of exposure.
Yeah,
That's what you didn't bleed to death, it was exposure. They didn't nail people to crosses, they tied them.
Yeah.
Lady Godiva was a freedom rider.
Yeah, we all know.
10 o'clock,
the whole
people.
world looked.
It's bedtime for Bonzo, so let's hear some final thoughts.
Nah, I'm good. Talk to you later.
How about you, Daniel?
I'm good. I just wanted to see if you could ask if you could find that message. It would. She would either be listed in your DMs, like logs as Leanna Kersner or Red Leanna K.
Okay, I'll just look for someone named Leanna.
That's Leanna Liana. Lima India Alpha November Alpha.
Gotcha. All right, thanks everyone, and thanks SKM and Monarcho Liberal and INVU and everyone else who was in the chat. Thanks to all the supporters, of course. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay strong. What?
Oh crap! That part was live.
Oh yeah, that was live.
Oh, sorry. That was meant to be private.
Well, that's why you wait for me to stop the stream.
Damn it! Sorry.
Too late. It's out there.
Damn it.
We all heard you using the NATO alphabet. You statist mongrel, you.
My dad's a pilot, okay?
No, my dad taught me that. It's cool. It's a lot better than saying B as in boy. All the things that people do. All right.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay strong and be free.